Welcome to the wild world of the diagnostic laboratory industry, where we focus on science, compliance, sales, marketing, and self-mastery. Welcome to Lab Results with Blake. I'm your host, Blake Bork. Imagine walking into a very busy cardiologist's office and you're there and you sell them orthopedic equipment. It kind of sounds absurd, but that's what happens every single day inside of the diagnostic lab world. Because if you're a salesperson and you're walking into a doctor's office and you represent just a toxicology laboratory, or if you represent just a molecular lab, or just a pathology laboratory, just an NGS oncology lab, whatever the specialty is, there's no guarantee that the doctor knows they have a need for your test. So if you show up to sell the test only, you're really you're banking on a lot of luck, right? It's like being at the roulette table and throwing craps. You can get there with frequency. You can call a whole lot of people. You can spend a lot of time behind a steering wheel trying to find people who are like, yeah, I need a better toxicology test. Yep, I need a better toxicology test. You know what? I woke up this morning, I was brushing my teeth. I'm a doctor. And I was thinking about Sarah, and I was thinking about her problem. And you know what I need? I need a better toxicology test. Wow. You walk into their office. Perfect time. That don't happen a lot, right? We're not selling the test, man, right? We're anchoring in the fact that we're experts in the problem and that we understand the problem at such a finite level that here's the possibility or the solution. And the way that we get there is, and I'm a broken record on this, we focus on the patient care. We focus on all the aspects of that test that make the patient care that much better. All right. So we're gonna take a topic, I don't know, let's do UTI. All right. Let's talk about molecular diagnostics, PCR, UTI. We'll probably talk a little bit about culture and sensitivity and why doctors are relying on it. Let's unpack a little bit around antimicrobial stewardship, antibiotic stewardship, and antibiotic resistance. And yeah, man, let's get started. So off the top of my head, literally, one of the biggest problems with any kind of a cell in a doctor's office whenever it comes to antibiotics is if you don't have a streamlined process dialed in your doctor's office. And that means that I can get a sample easily done, sent overnight to a laboratory. That laboratory is going to receive it from UPS, FedEx, or courier, and they're going to be giving me a result. Man, dude, it needs to be 24 hours. It needs to be next day. Guys, it just does. If your doctors are okay with 2 days, that'll work. But it'll only work if you are a salesperson and you understand that that means that if Becky is the office employee and Becky is the one who's checking reports, that she knows that she's got to set an alarm to check on that report next day or the day that she comes in that's supposed to be there in the morning and not in the afternoon. This is what I mean. And I'm not trying to jump all over on you. I'm trying to get to the point of the workflow and absolute turnaround time. All right. In molecular diagnostics, we're talking about UTI, we're talking about PCR, we're talking about antibiotic stewardship. Okay. And so one of the key factors that's super important here is actually the absolute turnaround time. The absolute turnaround time, not only, we always say in lab sales, I can only control when the sample gets to me. I can't control what UPS or FedEx does. I said that for most of my career. And while it's true, it's kind of bullshit because I do control that. I can improve some things. I can make sure that we have the most streamlined process. I can make sure that they're picking the best shipper carrier for their area, regardless if they know it or not. I can make sure that we send reminders out. I can set automatic reminder text messages and automatic email reminders and an alarm on Becky's phone that literally whenever we do the onboarding, it says, okay, now set an alarm right now on your phone that says, make sure that all samples are out of the fridge and shipped out. As part of the onboard packet. Like when I go and train them, I go through these processes to make sure that they're literally doing the things, because I know there's gotcha moments here, because I know for a fact that whenever we lose a sample, we don't get a sample, or there's a sample that's delayed, and they call me and I say, can you check the fridge? And I hear silence on the other end of the phone. Or it's like, hey, did you get the mail out? Hey, we didn't receive packages. Like, I know that that is a frequently messed up part of the process. So I got to set my little bear traps around it to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. I know that's a bear that can cause some damage, so I got to put some traps on it. So I set up a system to make sure that Becky actually ships it out. So yes, I can help improve it, right? Whenever it gets to the laboratory, the key here is, man, I can't tell you how many laboratories have employees that start coming in at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and samples don't get there till 10:30 or 11. You may be able to go directly to UPS or FedEx and pick up your samples. If you want to get 2 or 3 hours on your turnaround time, investigate going to UPS or FedEx to actually get your samples. There's a really good chance that if you give them some donuts and some coffee, they'll let you get them even earlier than that, before the actual store opens. I know that because that's what we did at my laboratory in 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. We went directly to the FedEx store at 6:30 in the morning, and Steve Tucker, my cousin, would go back there and actually pick up samples from the dock. That's how well we got to know those people. And it's just a relationship that you build and you develop with folks. Why did we do it? Because I needed to have the best absolute turnaround time possible. Okay. So if you're a lab owner, I want you to think it's our responsibility to have the best absolute turnaround time. That means I got to get those samples in my laboratory. Now, if I'm waiting for them to come on the truck, if I'm waiting for them to deliver them to me, if I'm waiting for them to, it goes through the whole route, and I'm waiting for them to get to me, they may not get to me till what, 11:30? 10:30, 11:30 if I'm lucky, later. I've got people who are just sitting there waiting to session samples a lot of times. I've seen this in a lot of laboratories. I consult at a lot of laboratories. And this is one of the things that we see, especially in the labs that maybe don't have a lot of experience with Lean Six Sigma approaches, and they're not very sophisticated. Maybe they haven't been around for a while. This is like their first or second year in the business, especially post-COVID. So that's the beginning part of it, all right? Then we have the actual turnaround time of the lab. So our clinics want to know that we got the sample. So if your LIMS system is smart enough to be able to alert and let them know, well, then that's great. If it's not, right, then can you have a process where you have a manifest and you know that your samples arrived at the laboratory and the laboratory is checking against it? Now, it takes a little bit of coordination, all right? Maybe you have to deploy something fancy like a smart sheet, right? Maybe there's something that you got to do in Google Sheets for you to be able to make sure as a salesperson that you know and your clinics know that their samples were accepted at the laboratory. This is, call it a luxury item, okay? It's like the Domino's pizza tracker. But if you do have the ability to let the clinic know samples got there, that's a bonus. But what's really important is that you have a QA process to make sure, and you know the samples that didn't get there. You should be pulling up your log the next morning and seeing all the samples that got checked in to make sure that the samples that your clinic thinks is sent are actually checked in against that. Somebody's got to do that QA process. If you don't have a portal that allows the clinic to do it, then you, as a salesperson, as an account manager, or somebody who's assisting sales in the process, somebody needs to be looking for those, because they're not going to complain about the ones that got to the laboratory. They're not going to worry about the ones that got to the laboratory. They're going to worry about the ones that never got on the plane. Those are the ones they're going to care about, and those are the patients that are going to be struggling. So you got to find your lost sheep. That's scripture, right? He says, hey, if you got 99 sheep, right, you have 99 sheep, but one of them goes missing, you're going to leave the other 98 and you're going to look for the one. So pay attention to the stragglers here, because I'm telling you right now, those are the ones that are going to cost you an account. So let's say everything gets to the laboratory, gets plated, the lab runs on time. There's been no issues. There's been no problems. The laboratory gets results out. Beautiful. What time do they get them out at? 8:30 at night? The clinic is closed. When Becky gets into work the next morning, If she has an alarm set that says, first thing, Becky, good morning. Just want to say hi from Blake. You're amazing. You type that in the alarm. Say you're amazing. I want you to have a great day. Please check lab results. Why is that important? Because if we rely on Becky's memory or her workflow after all the other things that are priority, she may not look at those results until 1:30, 2 o'clock that afternoon, if at all. It may not be till a doctor says, hey, those results have been late. Now you're banking on Becky's integrity to tell the doctor, no, doc, the lab wasn't late. I didn't do my job. No, the laboratory was on time, doc. In fact, you know what? I forgot to ship them out. That was my bad. We actually had to do a rush ship. Yeah, the lab paid for it. It was cool. And then, you know, they put the results in last night at 8:30. We had those results last night at 8:30, but, you know, I was already home. And so I got in this morning at 8:30. I didn't really check the results until 1:30, but here they are. Like, she's not having that conversation with the doctor, most likely. Okay. I'm just going to take your subtle nod in silence that you agree with me on that one. So you have this turnaround time at the end, the post-report turnaround time that also can add to the absolute turnaround time. Why is that important? Because if I don't have a good workflow, I'm going to empirically prescribe an antibiotic. If I don't have a good workflow and I don't have a good absolute turnaround time and something of therapeutic value to me, I'm still going to be empirically prescribing an antibiotic. The clinical knowledge of being able to separate out culture and sensitivities, turnaround time, and its workflow, what it misses, why it misses, how it misses, and the knowledge of the PCR workflow and what it misses and why it misses and how it misses. Those things are the most important, fundamental, foundational concepts that a laboratory sales rep, more so than the biology, the chemistry, the molecular diagnostic approach, the science, the actual workflow, because that's what the people who don't really care about the science are going to be doing. And those people are going to cause so many problems. So a lot of sales training, and we even do this, we start off with the science aspect of it because we feel like sometimes that's the hardest thing. But ultimately, very rarely you're going to have a doctor stop sending to you because of like mitochondria. They're very few times have I ever heard a doctor say, you know what, I'm just not going to be doing this anymore because I just don't feel like, bacteria are that resistant to antibiotics. And I just think this is all a sham. The reason why they stop sending is because they're like, hey, I'm not getting results back from you guys, and my staff can't keep up with it. And I keep getting complaints from patients about the bills. Like they don't stop. I want to be clear with this. They don't stop sending because of the science. They stop sending because we fail to fully understand the workflow and the pain that workflow causes that doctor's office. And so while our clinical knowledge and our clinical expertise is paramount to make sure that they trust us, the way we're going to lose that business is if we do not understand the workflow and if we cannot train the staff on it. And if we ourselves have not been trained, how in the hell are we going to train the staff? We could go over a lot of different, like, the reasons why this is important. I do not want doctors to empirically prescribe antibiotics because it's going to lead to more resistant bacteria. I do not want doctors to prescribe antibiotics to patients that have urinary tract infections that happen to be fungus. I don't want them to prescribe antibiotic to patients that have viruses. Why? Because all I'm doing is hurting the good flora that's also inside of their gut, and I'm not doing anything to stop the spread or the hurt or the harm that disease has or is going to do to them. So culture and sensitivity is a real hard thing for me to get behind. And I understand there's this whole Moldex movement, and these guys aren't approving any. They're not approving any technical assessments in regards to PCR and UTI. And I think it's crazy to me because I talk to doctors all over the country, and I know that there are people right now in this world who are contemplating suicide because they're in so much pain from frequent recurring UTI infections. And I've been a part of teams that have put those doctors on, or was able to enlighten those doctors about what PCR can do for them. And we started identifying atypical infections, or identifying where patients had fungal infections or had viruses or had mycoplasma, ureaplasma, and know that antibiotics would never work on that, or they had a resistant strain of a bacteria that the antibiotics they were prescribing were never going to work. They were never going to work. Or they had multiple organisms at the same time. They had 2 viruses, 1 bacteria, 1 fungus. Antibiotics was only going to work out of 2 out of 4. So it boggles my mind that I'm not a scientist, and I don't want to cause trouble. Moldex, don't come get me. But it boggles my mind that we're not getting technical assessments approved in this country right now for PCR, laboratory developed testing, and PCR inside of those regions. And that's a whole nother conversation. I don't mean to confuse you guys. I jumped. I want you to understand the avatar of your client. And you may think I'm talking about the patient avatar. I am talking about the medical assistant avatar. There is a really important avatar here that you have to understand how they tick and how they talk. And that is the person who is going to be ordering your test, inputting that order inside of your LIMS system, the person who's going to be pulling down the reports, doing prior authorizations, hunting down missing information for you. They're the person who's making mistakes and that you got to train. They're the person who's vital to the success of your organization. They very well may have been the gatekeeper. They very well may be a medical assistant. They may be a nurse practitioner. They may be the provider themselves. That's the avatar that you got to figure out how to make successful. It is your job. It is your duty to make sure that that clinic office staff knows your process and feels rewarded inside of it, right? You have to be trainable so that way you can train people. You have to create leaders. They have to want this, man. Leadership is getting somebody else to do something that you want them to do, and they ultimately want it for themselves. So guys, with that, think about what we're laying out here. Think of your clinics. Where do you have an office staff member that you know that you just got to go communicate to? Where do you have somebody that just needs some encouragement? They need some written documentation. They need a cup of coffee, a cake pop, and they need some care and some loving and understanding on how they can be successful inside of a process that you know could cost you an account if they don't get it. So don't go in there, be stern. Don't go in there and be hard. Go in there and talk about how their actions impact patient care positively and how you guys can get this right. You've been listening to Lab Results with Blake, with your host, Blake Bork. Please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Remember, greatness is contagious.